Welcome, amazing and beautiful souls, to the Intentional Resonance Podcast. I'm your host, Joyce Mathers, and I am so excited and thrilled that you are here because together we are going to make intentional waves. This podcast is based on my new book, Intentional Resonance, and on to a new way of being, focusing on everything personal, professional, and spiritual development to reach Christ consciousness within, to birth a true heaven on earth. I hope you'll join us, and let's create. Hello, seekers, and welcome to another episode 6 of the Intentional Resonance Podcast. And I have joining me today, the awesome Kayla. And today she's going to come and we're going to talk about a personal story, personal challenges, and how we overcome, because to me, it is in the sharing of our personal challenges, the darkest nights of our own soul, and how we get through that and sharing that allows others windows of hope. So I hope that's what this does for you today. So let's just dig in and welcome Kayla. How are you today?
I'm doing good.
Good.
It's still chilly. My toes are a little cold, but I'm good.
Such a dichotomy. I'm in hot and you're in like cold and snowing, and I'm like air conditioning.
Yeah, and I got the furnace kind of on, kind of not on. And I have a Saint Bernard on my toes. So
actually, I missed that. Actually, I think Rosie, or you know Rosie. You saw Rosie, right?
Yeah.
And she's the cuddler, and I think she's having a hard time here because I'm like, Rosie, I don't want to cuddle. It's too hot.
Yeah.
And she'll suffer through it, right? Just to cuddle, just to touch and be like panting and so hot. And I'm like, but I'm so hot. I'm sorry.
That's so funny.
But I purposely did that back home, in which I was like, hey, Rosie, come and lay on my feet so you can get warm.
Yeah.
All right. Well, are you ready to dive in and share all about you?
I am.
Okay. Well, one thing in the way that I look at our life and the things that we experience, I've called them spiritual catalysts. And I also akin them to being hit in the face by 2x4s until we listen and learn. And typically it's an event or a series of events like that. So I'm wondering, what was that, or what were they for you?
Oh man, when I think of this question, I look back and I go, there is not just one, there's a series of events that have occurred where it's like, wow. And right from when I was young, like and it's one thing I can now firmly say, I have changed, yet I haven't changed. You know, the people around me with the way the world is and the world changing and everything going on, they're like, oh, you've changed. And it's like, well, I have, but I haven't. You know what I mean? Like, I've always been this strong-willed little inner child and continue to be, but I have grown.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so there's been a series of things that when I look back on it, it's like, oh man, I get now. In the moment when they happen, you're like, why are you doing this? Or why is this happening? And you look, and now you're like, oh, I get it now. Oh, yeah. So I had to go through that.
I remember a lot of those, or going through those times and asking, what the F? Mm-hmm. Why am I facing this? So if you don't mind sharing, what were those series of events for you?
Yeah, well, there's been this is a lot. I didn't realize I thought, oh yeah, well, let's talk about my story. And then it was like, oh yeah, I gotta share this. I gotta share these things. And so some of the events, like when I was younger, knowing that I was already different, knowing that I had this spirituality side that others were like kind of taboo on, trying to manage those feelings and emotions and those, what I now know to be gifts that maybe were looked at as not so much gifts, but in other people's eyes, family's eyes. When I was a teenager, because I grew up and I had a really, really hard upbringing. And of course, my perspective of it will be a slightly different than my family members around me. But in my view of my life, I had a very challenging upbringing. And when I was a teenager, I just like had given up. I'd given up on all of it. I'm like, you know what? I am going to I was out of control. I really was. I was out of control, hoping that somebody would come and save me. Right. And
when you were that young and facing these challenges, what were you thinking? Like, what were you facing? If you can take yourself back into those moments, and what were you really struggling with?
So I was abused, like sexually abused as a child. And it's like, it was like everybody knew something was going on, but nobody wanted to talk about it. Right? They all knew I did not make it easy. The people that know me know that I'm loud, and I've always been loud. And so there were clear signs that were showing these things to the people around that, you rely on to protect you, and they could care less, or they didn't realize, or they didn't know, or they didn't. Right? So you go through that as a child, and then you hit teenage years, and I was like, yeah, nobody else cares. Why should I? Right? And I was dealing with, nobody was helping me deal with the pain and the trauma and all of these things that, you need help with growing up, especially under the circumstances. And so I was like, I just give up. Like, I just quit. And so then there were moments in my life where, as a teenager, I am presented with choices, and I don't think that they happened by accident. The people that came into my life, when they did, I remember sitting at a party with my friends downstairs, and there was like a guy giving out drugs, and he was like, pick a pill, any pill, one of these pills are going to kill you. And in that moment I was like, well, I don't really want to die today. Like, not today. Maybe tomorrow, but not today. Or, like, maybe yesterday I would have taken that, but today. And it was just in that moment I was like, why would he say?
We seem to have lost you.
So then,
there you are.
oh yeah, so I was just saying, I didn't understand why he would say that. And it was almost like I was like, what is the timing of him saying this? And all my friends were like, oh yeah, let's. And I was like, they're like, you're not going. And I'm like, no, I'm not. Because I heard what he said, and I don't want that to be me today. Like, and it was like the start of hearing people talking and going, oh, and then coming to the realization that nobody is coming to save me, that I need to want to live. And I remember sitting in my car one night, 17, and it just like I think my grandpa passed away, and me and my grandpa were very close, and he knew a lot of things, and we talked a lot, and I was there for him a lot while he was in long-term care. And I just remember saying, if you're real, like, God, if you're real, then show me a sign. Because at this point I have hit every crossroads and nothing is working. And in that moment, the song, Carrie Underwood's song Wasted, came on.
Right.
And it's about not living your life wasted. And I was like, oh my gosh. And I just got like full body goosebumps. And I'm like, okay. And I made in that moment, I literally made choices to change my whole life. I was in a very toxic relationship. I went home, and again, I like put out okay, what do you want me to do next? What do you want me to do next? And Carrie Underwood has been in a lot of my like these events. MTV was on the TV when I went home that night, and I said, me what I got to do next. And it was her music video came on, and I can't remember the song, but it's basically about maybe it was Jesus Take the Wheel, I think, came on. And it, about domestic abuse and all these things. And it's like, you got to get out. Like, and in that moment, I was like, you're right. You are so right. And the next day I woke up and I was like, and everything was good in my relationship in that moment. And I was like, I'm leaving. Like, I'm leaving. And my whole life changed. Had I stayed, I wouldn't be where I am today or who I am today. I wouldn't be as strong as I am today. It caused a lot of, in the moment chaos, but it really taught me about control, and it really taught me about taking my life back.
So it sounds like the facing of really when we're faced with abuse, there is so many different emotions that we're dealing with. There's the trauma and how could this happen to me? Streams of guilt and shame and not enoughness, and there's so many things, and so you're dealing with such a gamut of emotion, especially as a young person when you're just starting to figure out your own identity, and coupled with loss, and that seems like that began to form a series of critical thinking and observation, and also a pivotal moment when you were given a choice and heard something beyond yourself of, do I want to live or do I want to die? And you chose life. And from that choice, you asked for intervention. It was given that started to lead you on a path. And I know for me, in my own life, the presence that I cannot deny, the presence of every time I've asked for help, that help in some way is given. And all it takes is for us to be aware in those moments of how those messages come, to have the intention of seeing them.
Yep. And praying, asking, whatever you want to call it, but throwing it out there and being like, I need help. This is beyond, like, I had no guidance, really. Right. I had nothing. I was at this point where it was like, oh my gosh, this cannot be what was meant for people, for life. And not just me, but for a lot, like all people. This can't be normal. Like, going on in my head, I'm going, this isn't a normal way of living. This cannot be what we were designed to be here for, in a sense, and it was like, why is it life? I was in this very evil world, and I just couldn't understand how normalized it was in my life at the time.
Yeah, with this decision of life and the knowing there must be better, I'm curious, in what ways did you find to start coping with these, and both the external challenges you face, but also the internal ones? Because I know from my own personal experience, to start healing from something so traumatizing is a lot of work. So I'm curious, in what ways, after this decision and you started to hear the messages, what were the ways that you started to cope?
Well, I realized that I needed, instead of, because the way that I was brought up was like, it was like I was expected to live a certain way. And I was expected to, all these expectations. And in those moments, it was like, no, I'm not the way that I've been given this blueprint from my, surrounding people, of my expectations of how I'm supposed to live. I'm like, no, I'm not going to do that anymore. If they were, the control, that was passed down. I recognized once I got out of the relationship the toxic relationship I was in, I started to look at all of the relationships around me, and I went, oh, this is all formed on control.
Right.
And in that moment, it was like, no, I'm not living under control or under the way somebody else expects my life to go.
That takes a lot of courage, Kayla, and I really want to inquire into that if that's okay. What gave you the courage to step up and say, no, I'm not going to do this anymore. I'm worthy of better. What gave you that?
All I can say is the strength that I had, by seeing the signs of somebody hearing me, right, and hearing my prayers and saying, here's your sign if you'll hear it. And at that moment, nobody else was listening to me. So the fact that all of a sudden I threw this out there and instantly a sign, not once, but twice, but 3 times. It was like every time I asked, boom, there was a sign. Showed me that I was on, it was just this gut feeling too. I always call it this my gut instinct, gut feeling. And it was like, yeah, keep going. Yes, keep going. And with every small step I took, the more strength I got and the more confirmation that I was on the right path for once in my life. And it just strengthened me. It really did. It was like, no. And then I was able to recognize patterns in my own family that I was like, no, I'm not participating in this anymore.
Right.
I'm not. And I'm going to, there's more to life than what I'm being told.
Right. More than what is seen, more than what you've experienced. You just know there is.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, yeah, that's probably what got me through to where I am. And again, the cool thing about it all is when you go on this and that those things are happening, all of a sudden the right people keep getting put in your way. And like, so
I'm the right lesson at the right time, the right information, the right knowledge, the next step.
Totally. I had the opportunity to go work at a retreat, which was for healing. So I was working there, seeing people that were coming there for healthy coping ways of healing their trauma and and I was going, oh my gosh, like how cool. And then I would just learn from all these people that were healers around me, using their spiritual gifts to help somebody work through their own trauma and bring peace to them. I'm like, oh yeah, like that's no coincidence, right?
So for people listening, and I know it takes a long time to really, really heal. And I continually say that I'm continuing to heal.
100%.
We're always continuing. And I think, there's a lot of people out there in the world that are gonna resonate with physical, emotional, mental abuse, feeling different, feeling abandoned, rejected, in all these different ways. What do you do on a daily practice that or things that you have developed for yourself that keep you grounded in a place where you can feel good more of the time and anchor in love and connection with God?
Yeah, well, and like you say, it takes time. So I look at it 15 years now. 15, 16 years I've been working through everything that from that day that I decided, okay, enough is enough. It's been 16 years, half of my life healing. And so now practices I put into play are like, I do meditation. I read my Bible every day. I listen to motivational, videos, and I look to people that are pushing and challenging in a positive way. Keep going. There's set your intention, set your goals, and go for them. Like, and pray for them, and do the work, and pray for the signs and the answers to do the work to get you to your next season, right? So that's kind of what I do. I make sure that my home is mostly a place of peace. I have 2 little ones that I'm trying to teach these things to, and it's a lot harder than I thought. But
I'm only laughing because I experienced the same.
Yeah. And so, teaching them healthier coping mechanisms and ways of dealing with things and life experiences that they have and that they're going through. And so, but we turn on music and we get everybody dancing in the mornings, and we try and start our days off peacefully. And that's not every day, let's just say, but we try and rope her back in and bring her, bring it around, and who we have in our life. Like, honestly, we've got some pretty amazing people surrounding us in our family that makes it that much easier on the daily to maintain healthy, positive healing techniques, that you can sit and talk to these people about what you've gone through, and they're like, wow, like, that's amazing, and we can sit and share with each other. That's huge.
I want to emphasize that that's key, to be able to share with like minds your journey and what you're going through, and being able to discuss it amongst like-minded others, that you can share and feel supported and heard in these ways. And I know generally out there, that's not the consensus of conversation out there these days. It's very top high level versus talking about the things that are really mattering, because we're so afraid of what other people are going to think of it. Think generally, this is why I think, right, that the general population doesn't talk about the things they're really dealing with inside, or that they're avoiding, because, oh my gosh, what if so-and-so finds out that I'm dealing with this? Then I'm going to look like a failure, and I'm not going to look as good, and I'm going to be rejected by so-and-so and so-and-so. But here you are as an example, shining that by being that person, being able to stand up and be willing for others to reject you. You're finding a path that fills your heart. You're finding the people that add to and surround and support you.
Yeah, totally.
Go ahead.
Trust, and that you can trust in, right?
Yeah. The other thing that I wanted to point out that seems really important to me, and I know I've said it before in different ways, or I feel like I say it all the time to different people, how intention is so important. Of course, that's part of the title of my book, I guess, Intentional Resonance, but our intention of seeking, our intention of asking, our intention of praying, our intention of healing, our intention of growth, our intention of love, our intention of peace, all these things are so important, because without them, if there isn't our active seeking, then none of this happens, and we don't get the answers. We don't get the synchronicity events that come into our life that help us, to the next step.
Yeah, totally. And you have to know, you have to recognize all the emotions, because you've got, like, when you go through trauma, you've got to learn to regulate not one, but multiple emotions, and have self-control.
But isn't that, this is another great topic. Oh my gosh, this is great. But isn't that another thing, is we've been taught, if we generally look at society, that we've been taught that our emotions are bad. We can say, okay, there's some in our general society that, hey, it's okay to have these emotions and to have these thoughts and express this, but it's not okay to have these emotions and express these emotions. That's bad. So there's this separation out there. So there's this separation within us.
And then, you know what?
it's an inner reflection then that we're broken, or that we're bad, and that these emotions are wrong, and that we're wrong. And it's complete bullshit. And it's actually quite the opposite, that our
Yeah, and
emotions are gifts.
it's this never ending cycle of guilt and shame. It's a
Yeah.
never socially acceptable cycle of guilt and shame, and people are trapped in this loop of generational or traumas. And I really, the last few years, I know I've said this for probably 10 years, but the last few years I've really seen general blessings and generational blessings and generational curses.
Mm-hmm.
It's quite evident. And when you look at, and I'm not trying to do a compare this versus that, but when you look at families who talk and have conversations and work through these things and they have such healthier relationships, because communication is the key to working through all those emotions. And it's hard. Like, you pick your hard, right? It's like those
there's a great meme I saw, pick your hard, being overweight and feeling like shit is hard, and going to the gym is hard.
Gym is hard. Exactly.
Right?
So as a collective, we have to sit and look at our hard, and communication versus no communication. Both are hard.
Both are hard. Communicate, but the payoffs are quite different, right? No communication is there's disconnection. And that's often where there's the reaction to emotions versus the response. And where was I going with this? Help me out. Lost it.
Yeah. Well, and that's what we're seeing. We're seeing people, I think, that have lost the ability to communicate with self-control and emotional
agility.
Like the ability to handle their emotions in a productive way versus like you say, reactive way, because how we react, right, is ultimately
and that's like the aspect that I want to kind of hit on again, of where I was going, talking about emotions, that they're not bad, that they're actually a gift, is that we can start to use our emotions as our set point of figuring out where we are, right?
Yeah.
We have an emotion and we're triggered by something. We can check in with our thoughts. A lot of people out there think that our emotions are first. They just happen. And yet they're always the product of a thought. We may not even be aware of a thought because it's subconscious, and we've done it for so long, over such a long period of time, we don't even recognize it. But that's how emotions come in, and they're your greatest savior at the end of the day, because it's like you can notice typically that you're having an emotion or a reaction, and that you're triggered. And that can become, if you create, a mindful awareness for yourself in some way, it's like, okay, then I'm triggered, and ask the question and become curious of yourself in the moment of, what was my thought? What was I thinking?
100%. And I go through that still,
almost. So do I.
Still daily. Like, I'm like, oh, I just did that. Why did I do that? What, like you say, but it's I think people too think that, like, oh, once you work on one thing, it just like, and you heal, right? That the healing is like, and maybe for some it is, but what I've noticed over the 16 years is that I heal a portion of that.
Yes.
And then I keep going, and something else teaches me something else, and that pops up again, and I heal another portion of that trauma. And it's not fully healed, but I'm learning, like, it is healing over time, and I'm learning new ways of handling it or recognizing it or, dealing with it, and that a new understanding of why that might have happened. And that's how it heals too over time. It's things still come up from my past where I'm like, who trigger, like, and you're like, oh, I thought I healed that. Like, I thought I was done with that. And here it is again, right? But we have life experiences that come up, and new things, like, especially now with me with kids, things pop up, and I'm like, oh, how am I going to handle this without putting my trauma on my children, without being naive, without being overprotective, without being, all these different things of, and going, okay, let's look at this. Let's look at all these different ways of handling this situation. And it really opens up so many doors of continual healing and growth. It's never quite, but at subconscious level, it's those things that just come out of left field sometimes, and you're like, why? What? And exactly that. What was I thinking about?
Exactly. And it's always the thought. And that's how emotions are so beautiful. I always say, I personally say that emotions are God's gift to allow us to atone to our best selves, our authentic self, really at the end of the day, what I believe is God. Our authentic part of us is God. We're a spark and child of God. One thing I wanted to really summarize from what you're saying, when we revisit a trigger, and it's this continual cycle of learning, I refer it to as an upward spiral, that we're continually growing and moving through an upwards cycle, and we're evolving. For each time we come around to it, we have new awarenesses that bring further healing, and we keep going, right? So it's I know a lot of people that I work with, they get frustrated. It's like, oh, well, I thought we dealt with this, like, but it'll come back again, like a deep fear or a deep belief that is creating a fear will come out again in another part of their life. And, well, I thought I dealt with this. Just like, no, we're peeling the layers, and it's okay. It's actually great, right? But a lot of people get frustrated that they find themselves coming back to things that they thought they dealt with. But remember that we're always coming back with new awarenesses that allow further healing. So truly, everything is a gift. Our emotions are a gift. They are the insight into our subconscious programs and the thoughts in our mind. So great. Okay, I got to ask you, if from this point in your life right now, what would you say is your top learnings of your life?
Top learnings of my life. I have learned, I think the one thing that I use a lot, whether, it's right or wrong to some people, is I've really harnessed the ability to say no. And it's not because I don't care or I don't want to, or all these things. It's much deeper level or different level, and this ability to be like, no, I'm not going to participate in that today. And it's not out of defiance. Again, it's out of, how am I feeling in the moment, and is this going to affect my life? Like, I really, really in this journey realize that choices that we make are very impactful. And so I really take the time now to look at the choices that I make and how I make them. And sometimes that means I don't participate. I say no because I don't want to participate in that thing, right? I don't know how to explain it, but
well, what I'm hearing out of that, Kayla, is at the end of the day, what allows us to say no is this aspect that we've created a new relationship with ourselves in love, and out of that love comes personal boundaries. And when we start implementing those, there's an awareness of energy expenditure and energy flow, as far as with conscious choice, right? And discernment of what is energy, what is my current energy, what energy adds to my life that I'm willing to consume, and what energy takes away from my current well-being.
Exactly.
Really awesome.
And I've really learned relationships and how they operate and how they can, healthy versus unhealthy, and how to, use my words, reactions. Again, I'm not perfect. So, there are moments where I react and you're like, oh, I gotta come back and figure out why I did that. But, it's relationships have drastically changed because of, one, I participate in the relationship. Two, the way the other, I with the boundaries I set for the other participant to participate in the relationship, what I'm willing to accept or not accept. I have the ability to put myself in other people's shoes, and I don't get offended as easily when something happens that I might not agree with, because of the way I've been designed, or the the connections in my brain have been made. So I mean, I try to look at things from a different perspective. My downfall would probably be sarcasm. I've learned, going through what I've gone through, sarcasm was my go-to for a very long time.
Right.
So now harnessing sarcasm to take life a little bit more seriously, yet still have fun and like humor, that's been fun. Yeah, that's been a challenge. And then sometimes I've learned to keep my mouth shut. Sometimes I can't keep my mouth shut. And so it's, yeah.
Oh, wow. So good. Thank you so much for continuing to share. This is great. I think this is great.
Yeah, thanks.
Let's see. Is there any other questions I want to ask that are good? This is probably a good one. If you could speak to your younger self, what advice would you give?
I look back on my life and I look back at my younger self and how I handled things. And my goodness, I didn't realize it in the moment, but I think I did pretty freaking good. There's some things that I wish I would have changed. But I feel as though I was kind of born to be a game changer. And so I look back on it and I look at the conversations that I had with multiple people, and there's so many times where I'm like, oh my gosh, I was tough. Like I was a tough little cookie. And I don't know if I would have changed a lot of things. I would have maybe told myself about time. If that makes sense.
What about time?
About time, as in life is short, man, and that time isn't what we've been taught.
Right.
Spend more time with the people you care about, and invest time with the right people, and you can't take time back. So I think I would have maybe done some things a little differently, tried to have a better relationship with certain people. But at the same time, I am who I am today because of who I was then. And so I still sometimes, feel that inner little child in me sometimes. And that's what keeps me young, I think. Because it's okay, be the person you needed, right?
Right.
And so, yeah, I have to say, I think I was maybe this is my ego talking, but I don't know. I think I was a pretty tough little cookie, and I handled some very hard things and I didn't recognize it at the time. I thought I was
So
weaker.
it sounds like then focusing more on the things that are most important and also giving yourself some credit and some acknowledgement and
Yeah.
appreciation.
Yeah. 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 And not letting,
Things that you face.
people crush your self-esteem because their lack of emotional
Yeah,
boundaries.
I think that was a point that I wanted to bring up that I forgot somewhere along the way previously, was to emphasize in something that you were saying, that how you are able not to take other people's reactions so seriously. And that comes from, creating this new relationship with yourself, but also understanding that everyone else's reaction, actions, behavior has nothing to do with you. Has nothing to do, whoever's listening, it has nothing to do with you. Because
Yeah.
people are reacting from their place of pain, their place of trauma. And
Yeah.
they're at the end of the day, what really truly does drive us as human beings is connection. And
Yeah.
so every fear that we have is created and is working with a positive intention in our favor of what we think will better create that, even if it doesn't look that like that on the surface level. So every way in which somebody responds has nothing to do with you. It's somebody
Right.
reacting to their own pain. And when you can see that in these conversations and the people that you care about most, and you can drop into empathy and curiosity, and that's when we all get to start healing. So I know that,
Forgiveness, right?
yeah, forgiveness of them, really forgiveness of ourselves. We always forget that. And also that we're not forgiving other people for the sake of forgiving them. We're forgiving other people for the sake of our own well-being and our own peace.
Yeah. And one thing that when I worked at the retreat, one thing that they taught me was, it was like, picture this gift, like these people around you are giving you a present. Now you don't know what's in there, but you know that it could be their negativity. It's presented in a nice shiny package with a bow on top, but it's most likely negativity, or it is negativity. And they're trying to give it to you. And you're just like, no, thank you. I'm not accepting this today. You can keep that. And visualizing that for me was really big, because a lot of people want to deliver their trauma to you, or their negativity to you too, and pass it down to you, or give it to you, or whatever. And it comes in this, shiny box, and sometimes, and you're like,
Yeah.
oh,
And
no,
the blessing there, the hidden blessing that most people don't recognize, is that is your self-love and that is your boundary speaking. A lot of people worry when they start doing that, then that means to other people that they just stop giving a shit. But actually, what it does mean is that you become the light. You start shining, and you then allow other people to carry what they were trying to give you and
yes,
learn and grow themselves. So you're
yeah,
giving them the greatest gift of all, which
yeah,
is
yeah,
their own growth. And I think
yeah.
that's really beautiful. And I love that came out. Okay. This has been so great. I have one last question. Because I think this is good as we continue looking forward. And I know I have some of my own, but I'm really curious, Kayla, what life questions do you have now that keep you seeking?
Oh man, there's so many questions. There's so many. I didn't realize I loved school or history or any of these things, but there's so many historical things that I think I continue to seek for and search for. I know that I'm meant for more, that there's more learning and there's more growth ahead. And so I think that I'm just, I feel like I go through these, I call them seasons. I go through a season of like growth, and I get hit with all this information. I'm like, whoa. And then I go through this little like relax stage, and then it's like, okay, I'm ready. Hit me with more. Like, and so it's that continued to never give up or quit or just, stop seeking growth. Because I think that, one thing that I've always said is if you think you know it all, you don't. And so there's just always more learning and always more, growth in these seasons and on this journey.
What a great way to end, because I'm going to wrap that up. And how amazing it is to continually seek growth and learning. And what I want to end with right here is for any of you that are listening, that there is no failure. You can just choose for that word to not exist in your vocabulary and to know that you're not a failure in anything, that there's only learning, and that everything that you experience in your life is the gift that's going to get you to that next step, to what you're most seeking. Is giving you the information that you need in order to get where you're going and to meet and arrive at your greatest potential.
I would agree with that.
Okay, do you have anything else that you just want to share? Anything I didn't ask that you think is important?
I think I'm just going to stick with the life is hard, pick your hard. You can hold on to all of it and let it bottle up inside of you and eat you away, or you can learn to heal. And healing hurts sometimes. Yeah, but so does holding it all in. So, learning to heal and go through it all, just, you become that diamond in the rough.
Love it. And you do.
Yeah.
Well, there's, I think right here, right now, there's 2 testaments to picking your heart. And I know we both have chose healing. And I know for me, it's a blessing.
Yep. It really, truly is. Very thankful and very grateful. And I know some people struggle when they hear the things I've gone through, and then they're like, "You're thankful?" And I'm like, I really am. I know that's hard for you to understand, but I am, because it's brought me to the place I am today. So
love it. Thank you, Kayla.
Thank you.
I appreciate you so much for coming and sharing. And I know for me, coming and starting this podcast, and to me, this is all learning. This is learning for me. It's new levels of vulnerability, and that it's safe to do so, and completing the cycle of kind of teach, learning, teach. And really today you've shown courage and vulnerability in order to help others. And I just want to thank you from the bottom of my heart.
Well, thank you for having me, and thank you for listening to my story, my experiences.
Absolutely.
And I hope it helps other people keep going.
Me too. I hope this interview reaches the people that it's meant for, and that it will help. And on that note, we're going to say goodbye. And whoever's listening, thank you for listening. I love you. And I'm wishing the best for you. And we'll see you on the flip. If you are interested in purchasing my new book, Intentional Resonance, The Dawn to a New Way of Being, to contribute to your personal and spiritual development journey, it is available on Amazon in Kindle and paperback formats, Amazon.com, Amazon.ca, and worldwide. If you are interested in inquiring about the different types of coaching services I have to offer, or if you just want to connect, please choose one of the links below to reach out and connect. On TikTok, it's at Joy in Creation. On YouTube, at Intentional Resonance Project. And by email, intentionalresonanceproject@gmail.com. Looking forward to hearing from you. Talk soon.